Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this month's webinar, Hypnotherapy and Pet Loss. I'm Carrie Kearns, pet bereavement counsellor, hypnotherapist, single session therapist. Before I begin tonight's webinar, could I please ask that you like and subscribe to the Association of Pet Bereavement Counsellors YouTube channel. All your support and views would be much appreciated. Share the videos, share the links, and I hope that everyone learns something tonight or enjoys tonight. And thank you to the panelists that have joined me, the founder members that have joined me tonight. So without further ado, I shall begin. I was going to come out with a little jokey part and ask you all to look into my eyes, not around the eyes, deep in my eyes, and 3, 2, 1, you're under, but I won't, because hypnotherapy is not isn't stage hypnosis. Although I've had clients that have said, like, oh, hypnotherapy, what's all that? And, and people, as soon as you say hypnotherapy, some people assume that it's going to be, you're going to come at them with a swinging pocket watch and they're going to start quacking or barking as soon as you say a trigger word. And that is something I could make you do if you want to do that. But that isn't what hypnotherapy is about. So the swinging pocket watch is actually a induction technique where you focus on a moving object. However, I don't use that in my work. When you see, for instance, stage hypnotists, you'll notice that they will pat somebody on the shoulder or touch the hand and say sleep, and then the person's asleep, and then they do other silly things on stage. That's what we call a rapid induction. So that person's already been primed and ready, so that when they hear that trigger word, the system, their subconscious, whatever, is already primed and ready to go into that trance. So, but that isn't what I do. That isn't what hypnotherapy is. So hypnosis is used as a therapy, and it is to help people with a variety of issues that they might be struggling with. I help everybody with any issues that they may have, such as so outside of pet loss, weight loss, anxiety, stress management, phobias, things like that. But it can also be used for pet loss, pet bereavement, and the grief and the pain associated with that loss. So I want to talk to you a little bit about hypnotherapy in general, just so you get a feel for what I'm talking about, and then I'll go into the ways that it can be used for pet bereavement. So with hypnotherapy, there is an induction and a deepener. And what we're trying to get you to do is to go into what we call like the hypnotic state. Now, if you're reading a really good book and you're well into the book, you can't hear anything else around you, you're really absorbed in this book, or you're watching a really good film, and again, you just focus on the film, you can't hear anything else outside of that, anything around you, you're in like a hypnotic state, you're in a trance almost. So with hypnotherapy, that's a similar state that I try to get clients into, is that the way I explain it is like a pre-sleep state. So you could maybe explain it as, say, when you're in bed and you're all nice and cozy and you're just about to drift off and all your body is really relaxed, you feel really heavy and really, oh, this is lovely. And that is the sort of hypnotic state that I try and get you into, that really relaxed, full body relaxation state. Because what I'm aiming to do is to reach your subconscious. And I always get this mixed up. I think it's the conscious critical filter. I might be wrong. We have this filter where we think certain things, we have certain beliefs, and our subconscious is, they're in our subconscious, and we're like, no, these are good things to think. This has kept us safe. This has kept us well. We don't want to change these thoughts. This is what we know. And what I try to do is to reframe those negative or limiting beliefs and thoughts that you may have. But what I'm trying to do is reach your subconscious to get through that filter that says, nope, don't want to know, we're happy as we are, but you're not, because you're struggling in some manner. So by reaching your subconscious, I can reframe those thoughts, those beliefs, those worries that you have. So in a way that your subconscious accepts them as truth and accepts them as actually, yeah, this is how it is and I'm happy with this. And then you can make the changes that you need to make. So when I do, I mean, other hypnotherapists do things differently. The way I personally work is I like to do what is called a PMR, or progressive muscle relaxation. And I've written a script out, and a script is basically what the hypnotherapist says to you while you're in this hypnotic state. So the script is, it will involve me talking you through the relaxation. And I did have a copy of my PMR, but I don't want to send anyone to sleep, so I'll leave it out. But basically, what I do is I start at the very top of your head, and we work away all the way down to the tips of your toes. So I'll ask you to think, to just sit and relax, get comfortable. Imagine you can feel, can you feel the muscles in your scalp loosening and relaxing? Move down to your neck and your shoulders loose and relaxed. Down to your fingers, heavy, loose, relaxed. So basically, going through all the body parts until that person is, their eyes are closed, they're slumped in the seat, they're really drowsy, really relaxed, really comfortable. And then what I do is a deepener. So there's different deepeners that you can use. I like the staircase deepener. So I will, while this person has their eyes closed and in this relaxed state, I'll say to them something like, imagine you're at the top of a beautiful staircase, and the staircase can look however you want it to look. It might be a familiar staircase or one you've just imagined, and it can be stone, it can have really spongy carpet on it or a rug, however you want it to look. And there are 10 steps, and these 10 steps, and I want you to stand at the top on the first step, and then I count the person down. So, okay, 10, sorry, I get mixed up, like I'm going like 1 to 10. So it's like, okay, first step. And then I'll say something like, okay, now step down to the second step, going deeper, getting more relaxed, more peaceful, more calm. As they go down each step and they go, I'll say, okay, step 5, we're halfway there, getting sleepier, feeling more relaxed, going deeper and deeper until we get to 10. And then when we reach 10, they're completely in the hypnotic state. They're completely very relaxed. Nothing can, they won't hear anything around them. They're completely in the moment. And then I use either like a favorite place or memory that this person's already told me about. Or they'll give me ideas and say, oh, I really love forest walks or beach walks, or a combination of the two. And what I have done previously, prior to this appointment, is I write out a very detailed script. One client I had, she told me about a route that she liked to walk near where she lived. And I looked up this, there was a video on YouTube of this particular walk, and I watched the whole YouTube video, and I jotted down every tree I could spot, what the fields looked like. So basically I incorporate the sights, the sounds, the smells that this person may experience in their favorite place or in memory. And by doing that, I'm incorporating all of the senses, and it's like they're there. I'm basically trying to get them into almost like a dream-like state, almost. And they can feel themselves there, but they can still hear my voice, and they can wake up at any point that they want to. And so we go through that, and then the session, whatever they came to me for, we do. So I offer people a safe and comfortable space to relax. I ask people to bring a blanket, or I'll provide blankets and cushions, and it's really, really relaxed. The dim lighting, and it's just peaceful, calm state. So the hypnotic state, as I've said, is a state of deep relaxation and concentration. So, and then using suggestions, I can help that person to make changes. Now, when used in regards to pet bereavement, the state of deep relaxation can help clients to, I suppose, have a sort of reprieve from the pain and the intensity of the feelings associated with the grief. I'm giving them a moment where they're not needed by anyone. They don't have to say anything. They can just, this time is solely theirs. In fact, I put that into the PMR. I was saying, nobody wants or needs anything at this time. This time is yours to relax, yours to listen to, what have you. Now so some people, sorry, just I've gone completely rogue, I've gone off my notes, but one thing some people worry about when they're having hypnotherapy is that I or another therapist will make them say or do something that they don't want to say or do. And you can't do that. You can't, I mean, morally, ethically, I wouldn't, even if I could. With hypnotherapy, hypnosis works when you have an open mind. You have to want it to work, because otherwise you're not going to get through that filter that protects the subconscious. So people that come for hypnotherapy know what it's about and they're open to it. They want to change. So, like I said, I won't, I can't make you do something that you don't want to do. I'm not going to make you, whenever you hear a bicycle bell back, like, things like that, things like that. So I'd just like to put that out there that, you're not going to spill your deepest, darkest secrets. It's not like, you're not going to embarrass yourself. You're not going to say more than you want to. You are in control of what you say and what you do at all times. Now, so as I said, hypnotherapy for pet bereavement can help by allowing clients to access deep emotions and beliefs that may be hindering their progress with processing and working through their pain. So maybe you have a client who blames themselves for what happened, which I think we've all, had a few clients that maybe blame themselves for what happened to their pet, or have so how hypnotherapy can help with that, for instance, is that we can reframe those thoughts and beliefs in a safe and relaxed environment where there's no judgment. And hypnotherapy or not, when we counsel someone, there's never any judgment. There's only support, empathy, and understanding of what that person's going through. But with hypnotherapy, maybe, like say, oh, it was my fault. I did this, I did that. And we've already discussed this prior to this hypnotherapy session. We've had an in-depth initial session where we get the background of what they've come for, what we can help with. So when they come for the hypnotherapy, we just get straight into it, and we're trying to reframe these thoughts. And if there is, to reframe those beliefs and thoughts of blame that may be causing guilt. And even if it was a client where they were responsible, it was a tragic accident and they were responsible for their pet's passing, we can work with that too, because as I'll discuss later, there is a technique you can use to deal with that. So I'm not going to jump too far ahead. I've already gone off script, as it were. So the session itself can also allow a client to see their pet, and I was going to put it in like inverted commas, and tell them the things that they wish they'd said, or that they didn't get a chance to say. And in the hypnotic state, the client can resolve those conflicts and move forwards. And again, I'll discuss the technique that I would probably use for that later on. So you're giving the client a space to reconnect with their pet in a safe, relaxed environment where there's no distractions. You have a time, it's usually about an hour for the whole session. But you're giving this person your undivided attention and giving them the space to sit with their loved one in this safe space. So imagine, if you will, about 40 to 50 minutes of uninterrupted time in a session where you can be with your loved one's memory and sit with them for a moment. And after the session, you can revisit when you like, just by recalling what you went through in the session, the feelings, the emotions, and the peace. So what we can do is give somebody like an anchor where we may say, maybe the client says like, well, I love roses, or my dog, used to dig up my rose bushes, or something like that. So you could say to the client while they're under hypnosis, something like, whenever you're struggling or you want to, you're finding it hard to, have a vivid memory, or you want a good positive memory to come to you. Maybe they'll go look at a rose, look at a picture of a rose, or smell roses, and because you've already suggested it to the subconscious, it becomes an anchor for that particular positive memory or moment. So you can help with things like that, like give the client suggestions in the session, so that when they're out of the session and they need it, they can be like, oh, if I just even just like tapping, I don't know, holding a finger or putting a hand on the shoulder, or you can put those anchors into the suggestions when they're in the hypnotic state. And so when they're in like the waking moment, it's like, oh, I remember like when I do this, the subconscious remembers, and it can help to trigger those more positive memories that you've worked through in the session. It can also help to give the client a moment of peace and relaxation where there are no distractions, just time to sit with the loved one's memories, which I've said. So you're providing space for those inner thoughts to come out, to be spoken and aired aloud or in their own heads. They don't have to say these things out loud. But you can work on them together, because it's still a therapy session. You're still counselling the client. You're just providing just use a tool, an extra tool to help. And for that person, if they're having, as I said, regular counselling session, but that isn't to diminish what we do, because it's amazing what we all do. But if they're having a session that isn't a hypnotherapy session, obviously they have your undivided attention. They're actually being heard, they're being understood, they're being listened to on a level that they just won't get anywhere else. And when you combine that with the hypnotherapy as well, then you've also got the relaxation and it's because you're accessing like the subconscious, maybe other things are going in and settling than in the moment, whereas otherwise maybe a client's thinking what you've said, and then going away and find it difficult to recall, and then they do, and then but here you sort of it's there, and then and in grief it may be that someone feels they have no purpose, no strength to carry on, which I feel that we've come across clients that may say there's no point, I can't, what is my purpose now? And with hypnotherapy we can access together their values, their strengths, that are there but maybe buried beneath the pain, and help them to learn to reform and rebuild their lives, finding meaning which honors the loved one and keeps them going. Now, I've done a lot of, I do have a little bit more to go over, and then I'll keep going, and then I'll come to the panel. So some clients may struggle with anniversaries, or places, or reminders of what happened, and hypnotherapy can help them to find a safe place inward, a mental refuge, if you will, where they can cope with the intensity and move forwards. So as I said before, you created an anchor, whether it's a smell or a touch or a sound, or the feel of a favourite material even. It can bring the feeling of peace and calm that was found in the hypnosis session, in the session, that can help them in the present moment. So as I said before, if they're struggling, those anchors that we've already placed, they can access. So we wouldn't be sending that person back into a hypnotic state, or affecting their ability to do things they need to do, but it allows them to cope with it, gives them a moment in that. It allows them to cope with the pain, and especially in that moment where it's most intense, and they just need to, something to break out of that moment and move on. So overall, it's a space where the subconscious is accessed, and with that, we can work together, as I've said, to reframe negative or distressing thoughts and leave the client with positive ones, or at least a different view and a more optimistic outlook. So one of the techniques that I was talking about before, so I do past life regression as well, but I also do Gestalt and inner child work. And now the Gestalt work offers someone the chance to see their loved one that they want to resolve something with. And then the client more or less switches places and can answer as if from the loved one, their subconscious answering. So basically with this, you do a regression, and then the client goes back to that moment. We're not necessarily asking them to relive the trauma, but they go back to that moment with their pet that they want and whatever they want to resolve. And you can do it different ways, like you both fit in like a bubble or in light, but their loved ones there, you're here, and basically they get the chance then to tell their loved one everything that they didn't get a chance to say that is unresolved, things that they need that their loved one to hear. And I know we speak about, and this is usually used for humans, but I would like to adapt it for pets. And I suppose you could adopt this to pets, and so have the person imagine that their loved one's there. What would they say if they could talk? What, because we have conversations with our pets. We know they can't speak to us like human to human would, but what would they say truly? And I think, and then the subconscious answers. And I would say that generally it would be a positive thing that the pet is saying to the person. And if it's a negative thing, then we resolve and work through that. And then the client switches back and, as almost as if they've heard what the pet has said, even though it's them saying it, if you know what I mean. But they hear what they need to hear to heal, and then they switch back. And like I said, they say what they need, but anything else that they need to say, I didn't get a chance to say. And then the client then you do like a cord cutting. So the client can cut the cord that connects them, but it doesn't mean that they forget the loved one. What we're doing, and they're sending the loved one off with love, which may help with acceptance, but they're not leaving the loved one behind, just the painful part. So when I say we do a cord cut and the loved one goes away, it isn't that they're sending their loved one away and they'll never think of them again. It's they're sending away the negative association with that moment, with that loved one. The love and the connection will remain. It's the pain associated with that moment that is now resolved. And with the cutting, like the cord cutting, it's a symbolic gesture of like, okay, that pain is resolved, what was holding me back, what was causing me pain, and I send them off with love, and all that remains is the positive, happy moments. And it can help clients to reach that point of acceptance. They've got that closure. I think that's the word I was looking for. So obviously the Gestalt work I mentioned is adapted for pet loss, but I haven't used this technique yet, but I would like to. So if anyone wants to try, I'm more than willing to do that. But it is something that you can adjust to suit your own workings, and that's just personally how I would like to work, to use that particular thing. So everyone's been listening to me very patiently, so thank you. Niall, do you have anything you'd like to add, or anything that stuck out to you?
Well, to be honest, I'm fascinated because I basically didn't know anything about hypnotherapy. So I'm so you're speaking to kind of a blank canvas here.
Okay.
All I can say is anything that can help, anything people can try, anything that, can ease the grief journey. And so much of grief is about experimentation and about what works and what doesn't. So it's kind of what's the word? It asks us to be brave anyway. So sometimes, yeah, we need to experiment, and we need to kind of like even sort of try things that perhaps aren't normally in our sort of sphere of recognition. So yeah, I'm fascinated, and I guess it's all. I'm not going to start on really on a thing, but it's all works with on a the neuroplasticity of the brain as well, and quantum kind of physics level, etc., which is probably a topic for another evening. But yes, so yeah, I haven't got anything to add apart from that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so there is some like neuro-linguistic programming there. There is some like retraining, reframing, and you know, um, I've just seen Sandra. How many sessions do you normally do recommend in general for pet loss? I think it depends on the client, to be honest. So, I usually do blocks of like three sessions, not including like the initial session. So, the initial session is like the fact finding session. So this is where I would ask, what the person's favorite place is, favorite memory, so that I can take them there in the deep nerve and get, to get them into the hypnotic state. And then we would have a follow-up session, which would be so you go away, I write out the script according, I tailor every script to the individual. There are pet loss script, hypnotherapy scripts, and I did look at one, but I wasn't that keen on some of the wording, to be honest. I can't remember which bit it was in particular, but I just maybe it worked. I'm not dissing the therapist who created it. I'm sure it works well for them, but just some of the wording wasn't. It didn't sit that well with me, and so I would probably tweak it. But so I tailor every script to suit that individual. So I incorporate everything. Like I had when I was doing my training, somebody said they liked forests and beaches, especially where the forest meets the beach. So I threw in things like, as you step off the last step, you step onto pine needles. The floor is really spongy and cushioned. It's just full of pine needles. And you can reach out and touch the bark of a tree and all the smells and everything. And then we get to the beach and the bubbles popping on the stones and that sort of thing. And you hear seagulls and the waves and all that. So they would have like that. There would be the first hypnotherapy session itself. And then depending on how that went, the following week we'll do maybe another session, just in case there's anything else like lingering or that maybe. And basically, what we're doing, like the second session, is the same suggestions, the same reframing, but maybe because the more you do it, the more the subconscious is likely to accept it and swap it for the limiting or negative one before and replace it. So you've got to sort of give it maybe 2 or 3 goals before the subconscious sort of accepts it and takes it on as the new way of thinking about things. So yeah, I'd say probably about 3 sessions, but it depends on the person and where they are. Because what you might have to do is the hypnotherapy might come along way down the line. So maybe you'd need a good maybe 2 or 3 sessions of counselling without the hypnotherapy, and then the hypnotherapy is just more of the just to end the sessions sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's probably it depends on the individual, I'd imagine. Lucy, would you like to?
Yeah, I do find it absolutely fascinating, Carrie. I mean, I have no experience of actually the training involved or anything like that, so I can't contribute from that point of view. But about maybe 15 or 20 years ago, I did go to a hypnotherapist for insomnia for 3 sessions. So I understand, when you're talking about it now, I'm getting exactly what you're saying about the relaxation from the muscles in the head down and then getting into the swing of it up as you're saying it. But I can see that it's incredibly relaxing for a person, and I can see that it could help to reframe thoughts as well. So anything like that, when a person is in a state of grief, anything that can even give them a break for an hour from their grief, is going to be of benefit. It won't be, it will be for some people and it won't be for some people, but you can say the same about absolutely anything. So I find it all fascinating, but can't contribute to the theory or knowledge behind it.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, it gives people a break and sorry, I've got a fibro fog tonight, I think my brain. But yeah, it's I mean, hypnotherapy isn't for everyone, and you know, it doesn't work for everyone. Not everybody can be hypnotized. I think if I remember, it's up to like 75% people can be hypnotized. You have to be, you know, willing to go with it and be open-minded to it. And some people just can't give into it, sort of thing, and just don't go under. They just don't want to. And others, you know, are very susceptible to it. And you know, like one volunteer that I had, I'd only just finished the PMR, and they were like heavy, like breathing really heavily, and you know, on the verge of snoring. And I was just like, oh, gosh, they're too deep. I'll bring them up a little bit, and you know, so yeah. Sorry, what was the Sandra? Sandra, you're coming in with the great questions tonight. If someone has a problem visualizing, can you still hypnotize them? Do you know, right? I'll tell you a funny story. I have aphantasia. So, and there's different levels of aphantasia. Now, my husband, if you ask him to picture something, it's like a movie playing out in his head. He can see things, touch things, manipulate things in his head. Me, I don't tend to see things as such, but I can remember what they look like. So if I said to you, picture a seahorse, some people would see a seahorse as if they could pick it up and touch it and whatever. For me, I know what a seahorse looks like, but I can't see it, if you know what I mean. So when we were doing our training, you know, the teacher saying, like, you know, imagine there's a bright light above your head. Now, me being autistic as well, I was like, well, what kind of light? Is it a heat lamp? Is it a sun? Is it a star? She's like, Carrie, it's just a light, just any light. I was like, right, okay. Because I was getting two in my head. So I would say that if you can't visualize, then yeah, so maybe then we'd work on your other senses. So maybe I introduce smells. So say if you were to talk of your I don't know, like happy place, like say that a favorite time of year is Christmas and you love cinnamon. So maybe I have a cinnamon room spray or cinnamon stick and just waft a bit or whatever. So maybe I can introduce a smell that triggers the relaxation. Maybe it's a touch. So maybe it would be like a soft blanket or velvet or silk or cotton, something that is associated with your happy place or memory. And it's the touch that triggers that and helps you to relax. Or maybe it's the sound, you know, someone says, you know, they love going to the beach. I've had clips of seagulls and waves gently crashing against the beach. So there are different ways we can work with it. And it, you know, if you can't see, then, you know, how does it feel, you know? So that, but again, if the person is really struggling to, if that's really holding them back from relaxing and going into that deeper state, then maybe hypnotherapy isn't for that person. But then we'll just go into the counselling without the hypnotherapy aspect to it. Dawn, have you got anything you'd like to add? Or?
No, fascinating, Carrie, absolutely fascinating. And in fact, funnily enough, when you were describing it earlier on, I felt myself starting to nod off, my eyes closed, and I thought, whoa, you know, and I actively had to pull myself back to the room again.
Yeah.
Because I felt that the way you were describing everything, that I was starting to visualize the staircase and
yeah.
So maybe I'd be an ideal candidate for hypnotherapy. And it's funny enough because I was speaking to a client earlier today, and from what you've said tonight, I actually feel now that you'd have been, or she would have been, an ideal candidate, because everything you described, I think she would benefit enormously. Now, don't get me wrong, I mean, I've known this particular client for some time, on and off for some time, but I just kind of feel that this might be the absolutely perfect step for her now. In the situation that she now finds herself in life. And I think this might be the absolute, and I think that it's the raising awareness of all the different avenues that are available to people that are suffering from pet loss.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
what's so important, you know, that we do you know, embrace the fact that there's people like yourself who can help through hypnotherapy. You know, there's people who can help through spiritualism, whatever. And I think you absolutely nailed it, Carrie, when you were talking about you know, finding out about the client and their pet and the situation. And without that knowledge, we you know, and I think this is the key to understanding and being successful in the work we do. We've got to understand the client, we've got to understand the pet, we've got to understand that before we just launch straight in. There's no point in just you know, a client coming along and saying, oh yes, you'll be ideally suited to, you know, this type of counselling, and just going diving straight in, because that's not going to help anybody. If you don't understand the client, if you don't understand the relationship they had with their pet, if we don't know and we don't connect with all of that, there is no point in going any further, because we have to know all that information before we can best advise somebody, before we can best guide somebody. And I think with the service, you know, you're obviously a practitioner in hypnotherapy, and I think it's one of these things that we should really remember to keep at the top of our toolbox, rather than, you know, to remember that that is a great avenue of support for a lot of our clients.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ken, I must apologise. My dog's a bit unsettled tonight. She's
Oh,
in
no, it's
and out,
okay.
so my apologies to everybody
No,
for
that's
that, but
okay.
she's in and out the room all night. But
Yeah.
yeah, thoroughly enjoying it, Carrie. Thank you so much.
You. One thing I wanted to say also about hypnotherapy is it is a very safe therapy. You know, some people may worry that once they're hypnotized and they're in a trance that they'll, you know, that's it, you know, they can't be woken, or that they might get stuck. And that isn't the case. You know, you can easily bring yourself out of it. You know, it is very safe. And like I said, it only works when you want it to work. You know, you have to really, like I said, be open-minded to it. It is contraindicated though in those who may have certain personality disorders or some mental health disorders, just because of the nature of the work. You know, the almost like the dissociation, I suppose, aspect to it, I suppose. But other than that, you know, it is a very safe. And even if somebody didn't want like hypnotherapy, you know, you can still use some of the tools from it, like the progressive muscle relaxation, especially if you've got a client that comes in and they're very agitated, they're very worked up, and, you know, the breathing's very erratic and they can't get a word out properly, you know, and they're really struggling. You could maybe say, okay, let's just take a moment and we'll just, you know, just sit and just relax, and and guide them through the whole body relaxation, and then they're in a better place to start. I know when I have my own therapy, and sometimes I get in and then I'm all like, oh right, and then the therapist is like, just take a minute, just, you know, just take a breath and it's all right, and then just calm, and I'm like, and then you get the most out of your session then. I did see another question that as to whether it was a first or last resort or somewhere in between. Again, I think it depends on the person. You know, what have they tried prior? I personally think it could be like an in between, but more towards the end. I think it's, for, I suppose in a way, this is like the closing sort of therapy. You know, we've done the talking, we've got out the gone through the most painful bits, and you know, we've got all of that out. We've spoken about it. But this is more of the, okay, we've got that out. Now is the time for the what are we left with? We're left with the, you know, the negative self-thoughts or the lack of loss of purpose. Is that okay? So, and then we can incorporate maybe this into the ending of the therapy, as it were. So this is like the closure part. Or it may be used, or maybe the client finds that actually this is all I needed. You know, I'm at that point where I'm tipping over, you know, into acceptance, or I'm just not quite there. I'm still got these niggling little thoughts that are holding me back somehow. and maybe this is what just helps them to move forwards. I don't like saying move on, because it makes it sound like you're leaving your loved ones behind, and we're not. We're moving forwards, and we're rebuilding our lives without them physically present, which is what I always try to describe it. So I hope that answered your question, David, and I don't know if we've got any more. Yeah, PTSD, I would see, I think for somebody with PTSD, I think I personally, because I'm quite new as a hypnotherapist, I've only been doing it, like, just qualified just over a year ago. I have a feeling that PTSD is maybe one of the contraindicated, conditions, as it were. Maybe hypnotherapy isn't. Maybe something like EMDR would probably, or RBT, what's the one? Oh gosh, I can't remember the other name. EMD, more of a trauma informed therapy, or talking therapies. Or maybe someone that's a lot more experienced in hypnotherapy may work with someone with PTSD, but I personally would rather that they saw a trauma informed therapist for that, or had trauma therapy prior, because obviously the last thing we want to do is that person's go into a flashback during the dissociate. When you're so relaxed, and then you're not really sure what's going to come up. Kathy, the client is very much in control when using the therapist, is something I would say before. Yeah, they are. Can you recommend a suitable hypnotherapy course where to start? So I did mine through Chrysalis, which was part of the level 5 counselling and psychotherapy diploma that I'm doing, the first year of which was hypnotherapy. So Chrysalis do a hypnotherapy standalone course, which qualifies you as a hypnotherapist. You can join the hypnotherapy directorate, hypnotherapy society. There are other courses out there, but I can only speak for the Chrysalis one. There is also what's it called? So I did the Gestalt and Inner Child Higher Self work with CPD with the HSOH School of Hypnotherapy, and that was really good. Would hypnotherapy work with the family going through pet bereavement, or is it best one-on-one? I think it would be better one-on-one, just because you've got so many personalities and thinking styles, and everyone's. Something that I say to people work with pet loss is that although as a family you've lost the same pet, each person has lost a different version of that loved one. And it wouldn't be fair to do a group hypnotherapy session and expect everyone to be at the same place or have the same memories or the same issues. So I think it would be fairer to that client to do one-on-one, and then they have that devoted time to work through what they're struggling with, rather than trying to put everyone together. Susan, I have to use body relaxation with clients. It's very helpful. I agree. Hypnotherapy isn't something I knew anything about till tonight. I definitely consider suggesting to certain clients in the future. Is it a face-to-face or therapy online? No, you can do it online. Obviously, if you're working online, just obviously, like, for safety, just make sure that there's as with any time you're working online, make sure that you know where that person is. Are they at home, or are they somewhere else? Is there someone, in case of an emergency? But there shouldn't be an emergency with regards to the hypnotherapy itself. But yeah, you can do it online. It is a little bit trickier because you've got to make sure that you can see at least their upper half. Because when you're doing the hypnotherapy, you're watching somebody's breathing rate, so you can see if they're going too deep, and then you can bring them up a little bit, because you don't want them to fall asleep. You want them to be just in that pre-sleep state, so they can hear what you're saying, they can respond. But if they're snoring or whatever, if the breathing's getting really deep and slow, then they're probably too deep and they're probably asleep and not sure how much of the suggestions they're hearing. So but yeah, you can do it online as well as face to face. Would hypnotherapy be suitable pre-euthanasia of a pet? I suppose you could, yeah, for anxiety, not necessarily for loss itself, but more of the feelings that may come up associated with it. So I do help people with stress management and anxiety, which, you know, understandably would come up pre-euthanasia. So, and yeah, and they could talk them through, we can, you know, go through the process, and in a, you know, again, in this safe, relaxed environment, so that person is prepared mentally, for what is to come, and give them some tools and, you know, the anchoring and the calming techniques to help them when the time comes. Yeah, any
Can I ask, Carrie, what first drew you to deciding on being trained in hypnotherapy? Did you have some experience of it yourself? Because it's a fascinating area and I think could work really, really well. So what first drew you to it?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I enrolled on this counselling psychotherapy diploma, and they said, oh, you know, your first year is hypnotherapy. And I have to admit, at first I was like, oh, really? I don't want to do hypnotherapy. Like, what is this? You know, I was really like wasting my time. I don't want to, this isn't what I signed up for. I wanted to do counselling and psychotherapy. Why the heck am I doing hypnotherapy? But you know, once we got into it, the first couple of modules, I was hooked. I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. This is amazing. Because you can see it working and it appeals to my sort of creative side. And honestly, like throughout the course, I was like, I love this. A lot of my peers have decided not to carry on with the membership and not to practice it. But I'm like, do you know what? I love this. This is such a good tool, like therapy tool. And I love writing scripts for clients as well. One client who had ADHD, she said, I thought you weren't going to be able to hypnotize me. She said, because my mind's going off in all different directions and it's really, you know, it's always busy or working overtime. She said, but you put that much detail into your script that I could picture exactly what. She said, instead of me skipping ahead to like, oh yeah, on this walk, I would be there next. She said, before I'd even thought it, you were already describing it. So she said, you know, so that was nice. But I do love writing the scripts. I really like putting in all the little details. You know, if I'm talking about a forest, I'll be like describing the sunlight coming through the canopy, speckles of light on the forest floor, the feel of pine needles under your feet like a spongy carpet, the crunch of a leaf, the roughness of the bark as you touch a tree next to you. You know, I even describe like, you know, the breeze in like lifting your hair or like brushing your cheek, or smells of leaves and flowers and hear buzz of bees, and I go into so much detail. I love it. I actually did a script once that somebody loved Pokemon, and I incorporated Pokemon into the script, and I loved that. I loved writing that one out. It was fab. I incorporated a real place that they held dear to their heart and Pokemon. So I incorporate people's favorite places, favorite sounds, spell, you know, whatever it is that, and I'll research it as well. So someone said, oh, it's this particular place. I can't remember where it was now. And they said like, oh, this is like a favorite place. And I'll look it up online, and I'll look at videos of the place. I'm like, right, okay, so as you go along this street, you've got that house there, and that looks like that, and there's a stream there, okay, and there's ducks and whatever. And yeah, so I love that aspect to it. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think I'd like it, but I love it. I really do. Yeah. So we're coming towards the end of our webinar tonight.
There's another question come up there, Carrie, for you. For your scripts, how does it work? Do you have a pre-hypnotherapy meeting?
Yeah. So we have like an initial session. So I'll basically ask somebody, you know, what is it you're struggling with? What can we help? What can we work on? And then I will say, okay, as part of, so I explain what hypnotherapy is, what to expect in the session. And I will say, you know, do you have a favorite place, a favorite memory, or favorite smell, sound, anything that brings you peace and positivity and happy, you know, something that really makes you feel good and happy and relaxed. And then they'll say, oh yeah, you know, I love you know, going for a walk on the beach. I was like, okay, beaches. is it sand or is it pebbles? And they're like, oh, you know, like soft white sand, or can't stand the sand. So one client said, like, oh, I like the beach, but not the sand. So I said, okay, so imagine you're on a boardwalk, you're on these, and the boardwalk extends all the way to the sea. And you can see the sand, you could touch it if you wanted to, but it's not on your feet. Your feet are clear of sand. All you can feel is the roughness of the wood under your feet as you walk down the boardwalk. And so in this initial session, we're talking about all these little details that I can throw in there, you know, and then I go away and I write out the script. Basically, so I'll do the countdown, 1 to 10, and then they're in the happy place. And then I start to describe it to help that person to go deeper still into the hypnotic state. And then when they're suitably deep enough, I can see the change in the breathing and you can see they're visibly relaxed. Then we start to bring in the suggestions because I'm accessing the subconscious. Now is the time for the suggestions. And then we go back to the happy place, and then we go back up the steps and they're back in the room. And but yeah, we've put a lot. So the initial session, I say, it's the background finding, it's the getting all those finer details, and more importantly, what is it they would like to work on. And then I can work out, okay, is this an anxiety? Do I need to incorporate some anxiety work in there, or grief, you know, the focus on the grief? Could you give an example of a suggestion? I think it depends on the person. Do you know what, it's really this is so dark. It's really throwing me off because I'm just trying to think what kind of a suggestion. Oh my gosh. So it'd be something like, let's see, for pet loss. Oh, sorry, excuse my foggy brain tonight. So it'd be more like a reframe. So say someone's like, oh, you know, I didn't love my pet enough, you know, I didn't tell them enough how much I love them. So a suggestion would be, you know, your pet was well loved, was adored, was loved beyond measure, and that they were oh, it's hard to explain, but it's like, it'd be something like, you know, it's a suggestion is more like a reframe of, so whatever negative thought or limiting belief they have, you're putting you're turning it into a positive, you're giving them the positive version, and that is the suggestion. It's like, so a suggestion would be more like, okay, so what we're technically saying is, you know, instead of thinking this, you think, you know, what about this? This way of thinking works better and has more longevity to it and more benefits to it. I'm really sorry, Sandra. I feel like, yeah, I'm so sorry, but my brain, it's been a long day. I'll put in the group. I'll think of something and come in the group. Rest assured, you know, at the time I'd be able to do it, but unfortunately, I've got yeah, fog. So I'm really sorry. But I know what I'm doing. I promise. I just can't think of
I think that's the thing, Carrie. Sometimes we're put in the spot, and I do.
Honestly, I was just like, oh, sugar suggested, yes.
You know, but I think that's also indicative of the work that we do, is because we cannot carry the load of what our clients are putting onto us. And to be very, for us as a pet bereavement counsellors, pet bereavement specialists, is we have to have very healthy coping strategies, and that involves not carrying our work with us. So I feel exactly the same. Sometimes when somebody asks me something, what do you do in this situation, Dawn? I kind of go, I'm not entirely. give me 5 minutes and I'll take my mind back to that place. Because we have to have very healthy coping strategies with the work that we do, and because we're dealing with a lot of intense emotions every single day in, day out, we cannot carry that with us, that they're foremost in our minds. So I completely get that when somebody asks me something, I can never go, leave it with me. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
even like if somebody asks you if you're doing a radio, or if you're somebody online just pops up with something, it's quite often you have to say, hold on a minute, I put myself back in that place, because that is not the place I'm currently in at the moment. But I think it's been absolutely fascinating, Carrie. I've thoroughly enjoyed tonight learning so much about it. So it's been great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for joining me tonight, the panelists, and also everyone that's been watching. I hope that you enjoyed it, and yeah, like I said, I'm a relative newbie to hypnotherapy, so if I've said something and you are a hypnotherapist as well, and you're like, oh, actually that's not, I'm open to being corrected, but to the best of my knowledge, that's everything that I can tell you for how I personally work. So if anyone is a hypnotherapist and they want someone to write the scripts from, please give me, I love writing them. I love the storytelling, because that's what we're doing. It's like a therapeutic storytelling, and then yeah, I love doing it. So thank you very much for everybody. And as I said before, please like and subscribe to our YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks very much for a great, interesting evening. Thank you.